Hi everyone, so I thought I'd do another video on how to structure a good essay, but this time focusing on an inspector calls. So let's say for the purpose of this session, our question or focus is, how does Priestley use the character of Mr. Burling to explore ideas about social class? So how do we begin with structuring really good essays? The first place is to start at the start. It's really great to talk about our initial response to the character or perhaps a theme, something from the beginning of the play, something that then develops onto something else later on. That gives a really clear development or character arc and gives you a more holistic response in your essays. Your second point would then move on to the middle part of the play. So for example, something might have changed, perhaps they've become aware of their involvement in Eva Smith's death, or there's some kind of alternative interpretation of that character in their presentation by the middle of the play. And that leads us on to the ending. And the end shows their change or resistance to change and perhaps the potential reasons why. So, like the video before, it's similar to a timeline. You're thinking about the characters or the theme from the beginning, the middle and the end. So let's use Mr. Burling as our example. At the beginning of the play, he is really pompous, he's ostentatious, he's pretentious, he goes over the top, he's got long speeches. He's definitely the most powerful and in control of the situation and his family. But as the play progresses and we find out his involvement in Eva Smith's death, his power and control is kind of overtaken by the inspector and he gets very annoyed about that. He does feel a bit bad about the fact she's died, but he tries to shift the blame onto somebody else. And I guess by the end, when he's found out everyone else's involvement in Eva Smith's death, he completely resists the urge to change and he does not take responsibility. He shifts the blame onto anyone but himself. So this is kind of what the essay should look like. You've got a really good thesis statement at the start, and then you've got your three main points, which could become more than one paragraph, and they cover the beginning, the middle, and the end of the essay, as previously stated. So I've got a few buzzwords to help make your essay flow and to keep you writing. And I guess the first could be initially, because it's your initial response. And then you move on to that alternative interpretation. Although initially presented like this then happens, and this is what happens to the character. And then perhaps in the end, despite the fact the character starts like this, and as the play progresses, we actually see a change, and this is the reason why. And here are some sentence starters to help you with whatever text that you're studying at the time. And you can see I've used them as examples. They can be tweaked and adapted for any text in any essay that you write. But I guess the main concept is, from the very outset, we've got this pretentious and ostentatious character of Mr. Burling, who is definitely in control of his family and the situation. And then although initially presented as in control, as the inspector dominates and tries to take control, Mr. Burling then gets annoyed and he finds out his involvement in Eva Smith's death. And then perhaps regardless of his power and control at the start, by the end of the play, as a result of the inspector's interference, Mr. Burling has lost that power and he's lost that control. And he questions his whole role and status within society. You've got something, that clear development throughout, a real holistic response, a good strong line of argument. So just to remind ourselves, we've got that movement through our essays, the initially, although, and the despite movements. But what does a good thesis statement look like? How can we introduce our essays? So just like the video beforehand, I'm going to show you how to construct a really good introduction, a good thesis statement, something that you can use and adapt for any Inspector Calls essay that you write. So spend time crafting it now. Focus on what the writer is doing, on how the writer is doing it, and why, the purpose that the writer has written it for. There's always an intention. So if we take Mr. Burling and we take these three focus areas, we can come up with an introduction that's similar to this. Priestley presents the arrogant and portentous character of Mr. Burling as someone obsessed with wealth and status, and therefore representative of the ignorant bourgeoisie that he uses the play to criticise. Most powerfully, as the play develops and the characters become aware of their involvement in Eva Smith's death, Mr. Burling's attitude does not change, emphasising Priestley's intention to highlight the capitalist greed within society and show the need to change. So let's see if we can adapt this for another character. Again, focusing on the what, the how, and the why. So let's take Mrs. Burling, for example, a character that's quite similar to Mr. Burling in every sort of sense. And here we go. Priestley presents the arrogant and unsympathetic character of Mrs. Burling as someone obsessed with wealth and status and therefore representative of the ignorant bourgeoisie that Priestley uses the play to criticise. Most powerfully, as the play develops and the characters become aware of their involvement in Eva Smith's death, Mrs. Burling's attitude does not change, emphasising Priestley's intention to highlight the capitalist greed within society at the time and the need for them to change. So I guess just to really show you the need to craft your thesis statements perhaps before you write your essays and know what you're essentially going to say in the overall intentions, I've got another character here and I've used really similar sentences, but I've changed it again for Sheila, somebody quite different to the other two, focusing on the what, the how and the why. Priestley presents the maturation of the infantile character of Sheila, highlighting her initial obsession with wealth and status and therefore representative of the ignorant bourgeoisie that he uses the play to criticise. Most powerfully, as the play develops and the characters become aware of their involvement in Eva Smith's death, Sheila does not change, emphasising Priestley's intention to highlight the capitalist greed within society and show them the need to change. So it's really quite similar, but I've changed it slightly and I've tweaked it and adapted it to suit Sheila explicitly. So just a final reminder, you've got a really clear thesis statement, you've got your first point from the beginning, the second from the middle-ish and the last from the end to make that really good, strong essay and line of argument. So here are a few things to think about before you go away and start writing your essays. First, you have to read the question carefully, know which question you're choosing for this, and make sure you see the whole concept and the components of that question. Don't just focus on the character, there might be something else to it. Second, plan that arc that I showed you earlier. Third, start with a clear thesis statement, following the what, the how and the why. Fourth, definitely include those 3 clear points. Now remember, they don't have to be a paragraph a point, you can elongate and extend those. 5, choose references carefully to support your paragraphs. And 6, definitely develop and analyse all of the methods used by the author. What was the authorial intention of all of those different aspects of the play? Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this session.